All right, let's check in with our week in review panel to talk about all things BTC price and other Bitcoin news. We've got CoinDesk managing editor of technology, Christie Harkin in Toronto, and managing editor of markets, Brad Keoun in Austin. Hey, Brad and Christie.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. What a week. I am so glad it's over, but Brad, we've been seeing such crazy markets.
You know, I was thinking last week, your comment about a bloodbath, and we shrugged it off. But yeah, we have seen a bloodbath since then. I think even Christie would acknowledge that this was a bloodbath.
Hey, we're still not down 80%.
Oh,
yeah, that's a great point.
We need to get down to $14,000 for that to happen. All right, so obviously the big story of the week was the collapse of Terra Luna. But before we get into that, let's check in with, we had inflation numbers come in. It clocked in around 8.3% in April with the consumer price index numbers. That's down from 8.5% in March, but still pretty high. Also, President Joe Biden in his speech is calling for getting inflation down, his top domestic priority, Brad. So are we expecting some austerity ahead, and is that being priced into the markets even further?
Yes, I mean, definitely, Powell, Fed Chair Jerome Powell last night, he had a comment with NPR Marketplace and basically reiterated that they're planning to go 50 basis point hikes at the next couple meetings. And I read that as just a sign of, the world changes around some of these things, and these are projections out into the future. But really, the only thing that matters is what they say today, because that is what they are working on, is the markets today. So whatever he says today, it kind of doesn't even really matter what they end up doing. It only matters what he says today. So in between the combination of this week's inflation data, which we peaked, but it's still really high. They have a long way to go to fight the inflation. On the other hand, the markets, it's not just crypto. Traditional markets have taken a bruising. And so, Powell is going to be feeling the heat from a lot of people who don't want to see the stock market going down. And of course, our entire retirement system is built on asset prices like stocks and bonds. And these are teachers' retirement, and they're backed by the state. So they can't just let the markets fall out of bed. So, but if you sort of take all that, the pressure's still on the Fed, but they're feeling the heat. So they're just going to stay the course. So that's the message for today.
Mm-hmm. So, and as we see, there's a lot of fear out there on the fear and greed index. So people are very uncertain about, how far this hawkish Fed will go, and it's being priced in the markets right now. All right, the big story, Terra Luna. So, an incredible collapse of the Terra Luna ecosystem. They are all due to the unpegging of their peg, UST. We saw the investment token in the Terra Luna ecosystem, Luna, also collapse. Just in April, it was worth about, over $100 per Luna token, a $40 billion market cap. That has been basically erased. I mean, the market cap, I believe now, is at 3 or 4 billion, but the Luna token is about half a penny. And UST at its low was trading at 6 cents, which is 94% off of its $1 US peg. So, Christie, in terms of how Bitcoiners approach this, a lot of Bitcoiners were cheering on the Luna Foundation Guard when they were buying up their collateral to back up the Terra Luna ecosystem and their UST algorithmic stablecoin in case something like this happened. And now that the worst possible thing that was feared actually did happen, some are comparing this to Mt. Gox, and Mt. Gox, you could see a lot of Bitcoin hitting the market. Luna Foundation Guard accumulated about $3 billion worth of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. We could see that. We're not sure what happened to that money, but I mean, is that impacting Bitcoin? And if so, how much?
Yeah, lot to unpack there from your description. Yeah, lots to unpack. So here's the thing. Yes, Bitcoiners were cheering on the Luna Foundation Guard when it was buying Bitcoin because it was buying Bitcoin. I mean, that was hey, anybody who's going to buy Bitcoin, nobody's going to, say, hey, stop buying Bitcoin to do whatever it is you want to be doing with your Bitcoin. The fact that it was propping up a kind of sketchy stable coin, nobody's happy about that. Nobody wants to see people lose money. And, Bitcoiners, the maxis will be like, if you're going to put money into something that isn't Bitcoin, that's your funeral down the road, most likely. But at the same time, if you've got a stable coin that thinks that Bitcoin is the reserve to go to, that does also prop up the Bitcoin narrative. Now, is the failure of Luna does it have anything to do with Bitcoin itself? No. What's interesting, though, and this is where I think the Mt. Gox parallel comes in, not in terms of, it's huge and that Luna or Terra was huge and it failed, and therefore it's going to negatively impact the ecosystem the way Mt. Gox did. I think that what people are looking at is down the road, over the summer, beginning this summer, we're going to see a large amount of Bitcoin from the Mt. Gox recovery hitting the market potentially, because the people who lost money in Mt. Gox are going to be getting a percentage of their losses back in Bitcoin, and they may sell that. And what we're looking at is roughly $4 billion worth of Bitcoin suddenly being available again. Now, what's going to be interesting is that money going to hit the market? First of all, are people going to sell all of that Bitcoin? And if so, how will Bitcoin react to it? So here's where the parallel comes in. If Luna went and sold what is almost $4 billion worth that I think they had, or $3 billion.
It was $2.6 billion that they had, but $3 billion worth of cryptocurrencies about.
Yeah. So if just under $3 billion worth of Bitcoin hit the market this week, as the Luna Foundation Guard sold it off to support the peg, I mean, that's a heck of a lot of Bitcoin. And sure, Bitcoin has been having a rough week, but it hasn't been having that rough a week. So I just to be clear, though, we know that the LFG sent the Bitcoin to exchanges. From there, we are not 100% sure that it got sold. So this is all speculation. We can't be sure at this point whether that Bitcoin actually got sold, from what I understand.
If I can hop in there, Christie, yeah. I mean, I agree with everything you say. I mean, I think it's interesting to look back at the market in hindsight and think about kind of the dual forces of speculation and then kind of like real demand, right? So, for example, if you go back to when Elon Musk tweeted that Tesla was going to, accept Bitcoin or start buying Bitcoin, that was that demand or was that speculation about demand? And I think over the past few weeks before the Terra collapse, and you had this, Luna Foundation Guard buying Bitcoin, but for their reserve, and it was $3 billion, maybe going to $10 billion. But there's a lot going on. There's all this Federal Reserve stuff. There's risk on, there's risk off. And so then it was kind of like, did we actually see any impact from the Luna Foundation Guard buying Bitcoin? I mean, Bitcoin, Dominic Dantes, our technical analyst, is just making the point that we're in the 7th straight week of Bitcoin decline. And, that covered the period when Luna Foundation Guard was supposedly buying this Bitcoin. And then, again, to Christie, we don't know exactly what happened with that Bitcoin, but let's just assume they sold it. I mean, again, from the speculator's point of view, maybe they probably did. And we're still here at $30,000. So I think that, to Christie's point, it's not that bad in the bigger scheme of things.
I also just want to correct myself.
It went way up, but it didn't go way down.
Yeah.
I just want to correct myself. I'm just looking at the Luna Foundation Guard Reserve numbers now, and they actually had about $4 billion in their reserves. I believe it was 2.6 or 2.8 billion of that was in Bitcoin. But, and I know this will be a tough question, Brad, to answer, but, how much of Bitcoin's fall this week do you think was due to Terra's collapse and the draining of their Bitcoin reserves? Many analysts actually say it had minimal impact, as you kind of alluded to.
I would say this was an ugly week in crypto markets. You had lots of turmoil, all of this noise around Terra. A lot of people don't make too much of a distinction between this cryptocurrency. They do, but, I think there was a lot of, you showed the chart, extreme fear. This was a week where we saw extreme fear. We saw the market tanking. I'm sure people were selling Bitcoin, trying to get out. So it could be the fear. Again, it's the speculation versus what is the supply and demand for Bitcoin. In this case, probably a lot of speculation. People just looking to get out of this market, for whatever reason. Yeah. And a lot of it's just because you don't know what's coming next.
Christie, do you think collateralizing UST with Bitcoin ultimately was bad for Bitcoin?
I think anybody who is going to use Bitcoin for whatever is going to be good for Bitcoin. Like Brad was saying, you're getting a use case. And if collateralizing something is a use for Bitcoin, then go ahead. That's a use case for it. What is bad for Bitcoin is when things break. And to be clear, it's not that it's not that Terra's platform broke. It did what it was supposed to do. It just failed to do what it was
designed to fail.
The code ticked along, did exactly what it was supposed to do, but there were lots of other factors. When you're dealing with an algorithmic stablecoin that is supposed to self-regulate and look after itself, and some external factor is pulling on it in a direction that the code wasn't particularly anticipating, or maybe it was, but people didn't care. I don't know. The code operated the way it was intended to. It just didn't get the result people wanted it to have. And anytime that something like this goes wrong, it's bad for the ecosystem. And it takes a nuanced look at Bitcoin itself in order to be able to separate the fundamentals of the technology of Bitcoin from the fundamentals of the technologies of other coins and blockchains that may not live up to the bar that is set by Bitcoin. No matter what happens with Luna, or no matter what happens with Tether, the Bitcoin blockchain is going to tick on every 10 minutes, producing more coins, and people will keep mining it and keep verifying the results of the transactions on their nodes, and that's just going to happen. And it's unfortunate that the entire ecosystem will get tarnished when these things happen, but in the end, I think that it provides a foil for the cryptocurrencies that are successful and have fundamental strengths.